Christiane Amanpour, the chief international anchor at CNN and host of the global podcast, The X-Files, with Jamie Rubin. Christiane, great to have you on the show today. Now, you are a political analyst and commentator. You're not a psychologist. But what do you think Donald Trump really means when he talks about taking Greenland? Do you think he's seriously thinking about some kind of military intervention?
Can I just say, Andrew, that everything you thought about Donald Trump is off the table now. Really, nobody can predict. People would be stupid to say what he might do one day or the next day. And I think this abduction, he likes the word kidnap when it was posed to him by a reporter of Maduro, shows it. Even the most seasoned, even the most cynical foreign policy strategists did not believe that Trump's, intervention in Venezuela would go that far as to seize the dictator there, despite what they think about him, that he's illegitimate and all the rest of it, and that he's a narco-terrorist, etc. They did not believe it, but now it's happened. And so essentially anything can happen. That's why I think what Jeremy Hunt said to you last night was vitally important. You've seen that the European leaders have now stood up. They have not criticized wholesale the Trump action in Venezuela, but they have issued a warning altogether about Greenland, which happens to be in their hemisphere and happens to be part of NATO, part of Denmark. And as you know, and as you just said, the Danish prime minister also said it would be the end of NATO. Not it might be, or it would be difficult for NATO. It would spell the end of NATO. So I think that there are two things here. One is the West has to stand up for what it believes in and secure its own hemisphere, if you like, or its own zone of influence and its own NATO. Even though America is the toughest and the biggest part of it. And also, you cannot predict with any certainty anymore what Trump will do. And just to add to that, it's not just me saying that. It's Trump's own previous security officials like John Bolton, who is his national security advisor and is a long-term Republican and a neocon and, no namby-pamby. And he basically said after the seizure of Maduro that Trump does not have a foreign policy philosophy. It's one thing one day and one thing the next day. So we just do not know is a simple answer.
Sure. And of course, John Bolton's a big Trump critic these days as well.
Yeah.
I take what you say about not being able to second guess Donald Trump these days very much to heart. Nonetheless, I guess one of the dangers for the Western European members of NATO now is that Trump understands how much they need American support, how much they need American military power, and guesses that in the end they will put pressure on Denmark to give Trump whatever he wants rather than break that alliance.
We'll see. I mean, this is the make or break for Europe, frankly. And to be fair, Trump has over the last year, he has basically made it clear that he's practically severing the strings between the United States and Europe. He says certain nice things about NATO, but then in his national security strategy, which we saw just, last month, it was, Europe faces civilizational erasure. It was cozying up to the idea of Russia and that kind of big power, big strength politics. Stephen Miller, who is Trump's deputy, essential, most senior political advisor inside the White House and has the whole immigration brief, has apparently now got every other brief. And, he said the Venezuela action showed that, it might be nice. And I'm quoting him, the niceties of international rules and regulation and the UN and, decades, 80 years of the American rule-based order may be all nice, in his word, but Trump has proved that we live in, quote unquote, the real world in which strength and power and all the other big words that they like to use actually dominate. So, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen next?
Well, I'm beginning to ask myself whether the whole post-Second World War international order, all that, panoply of rules and judges and the rest of it, is now looking like a mirage. And we're actually living in a world of at least three big competing empires, Russia, China, and America. And we better get used to it.
I mean, yes, but even that doesn't make any sense, because if Donald Trump has identified, and a lot of his people have identified China, and frankly, previous administrations have, as the big competitor for the, global dominance. Well, then what's he doing in Venezuela, not addressing China, which has a very deep foothold in Venezuela and in many other parts of Latin America, not Central America, but Latin America, South America, China is very deep in there, and nobody said anything about China, though. So it's unclear what Trump wants.
And Christiane, just one final question about Venezuela itself, and indeed about Colombia on the border, where we're hearing menacing noises from Trump as well. How big a problem do you think that could be? How deep a quagmire could that be for Trump?
Well, look, he has done a very successful, thanks to the CIA and the US military, they've done a successful military operation. They have no plan B. They have no boots on the ground. They have no plan for, quote unquote, nation building that they say they want to do. Today, he said, or overnight, he said that there would be no elections for a democratic transition until the US, quote, I think he said, heals Venezuela and lets it get back on its feet. Now, that isn't something you do by remote from Washington or from Mar-a-Lago. That's something that really takes a huge amount of policy, of advisors, of people on the ground as well. And there's no planning for that whatsoever, not to mention America's pretty dismal record on nation building ever since 9/11, whether it's Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, the whole lot. You get rid of strongmen, and then you don't have a plan B. And then the reaction and the result is worse. And by the way, it's going to be very bad, this, for Ukraine as well. I know you're going to talk about the Ukraine thing in Europe, but there are no U.S. guarantees. And even if Ukraine says that they have a guarantee from Trump, they cannot trust it or believe it, according to many allies and analysts.
Wouldn't life be easier and safer if great nations learned from their past mistakes?